The screech of tires still echoed in some distant part of his mind, a phantom sound accompanied by the screams of strangers. He had died in a daze, struck by a car. Yet, in the space of a breath, consciousness returned. He saw a younger face in the mirror, his own from decades ago. His roommate, Mike, called through the bathroom door, asking if he was all right. Caleb splashed his face with cold water, the shock steadying him. He told Mike he was fine. Mike urged him to hurry, explaining that the football game was starting soon and they'd miss the good seats if they were late. The words sparked a memory. This was the day he was supposed to meet Logan for the first time. The beginning of it all. A sharp pain bloomed in his chest. He gripped the edge of the sink, took a deep breath, and told his roommate his stomach felt off. He wouldn't be going today. Mike should go on ahead. Through the door, he could hear Mike's hesitant concern, but the pull of the game was stronger. The click of the front door closing was a signal of release. Caleb slid to the floor, his strength gone. Staring at the blank white ceiling, Logan's face swam in his vision. He remembered Logan at 48, looking down at him with a frown creasing his brow. Logan had said, with brutal honesty, that they were middle-aged men and he needed to be direct. He needed an heir to carry on the family name, and since Caleb couldn't provide one, he had found someone who could. It wasn't a marriage, just a necessity. He had asked Caleb, cruelly, whose fault it was that he couldn't conceive. The words, so blunt, had made Caleb's eyes burn. Caleb had tried to remind him of his past promises, but Logan had dismissed them as youthful folly. Society had expectations, he'd argued. What would people at his company think of a man his age without a child? He then took a breath, his patience fraying, and unleashed the final, most cutting accusation. He claimed that Caleb had been the one to turn him, forcing him onto a path that had cost him countless opportunities. How could Caleb be so selfish as to deny him a child now? But it had been Logan who first confessed his love. It was Logan who had promised they would overcome everything, that they would be happy forever. Caleb had so much he wanted to say, but all that came out were weak protests. He could have told him. They could have broken up. Caleb would never have stopped him from pursuing a normal life. Logan had cut him off, telling him not to be so naive. He told him to just pretend it never happened, that he would continue to support him financially. Caleb had watched, stunned, as Logan slammed the door, leaving him behind. The boy with sincere love in his eyes was gone, replaced by a man whose soul had rotted away with age. A single drop of water from the faucet hit the porcelain sink, pulling Caleb from the memory. He looked at his own pale, young face in the mirror and gave a bitter smile. Logan, if you claimed I was the one who ruined your life, then so be it. This time I will ensure our paths never cross. We can finally let each other go. The second day of his new life felt more real. Being back in a university lecture hall made him feel rejuvenated. After the class, he walked back to the dorm with his 3 roommates. Mike remarked that for some reason, Caleb seemed far more composed than he had been just a few days ago, carrying himself with the air of a tenured professor. Another roommate exaggeratedly added that Caleb now looked at them with the benevolent gaze of a proud father. The third joked that it made sense since Caleb was the one who always brought them food, making him the official dad of the dorm. Caleb just smiled. As they walked, someone hurrying past collided with his shoulder, making him stumble. The person muttered a quiet apology and kept moving, head down. Mike, ever protective, started to get angry, shouting after the stranger for not watching where he was going before turning to check if Caleb was okay. Caleb shook his head, saying he was fine, but his eyes followed the tall, straight back of the person who was already far down the path. A strange feeling of familiarity washed over him. Mike clapped him on the shoulder, asking if he was still looking because he wanted to chase the guy down and teach him a lesson. Caleb quickly laughed it off, explaining that the person's silhouette just seemed familiar. Mike agreed, noting that the solitary, intense vibe reminded him of someone. He snapped his fingers, remembering the physics department's transfer prodigy. Caleb looked confused, so Mike slung an arm around his shoulders as they walked. He explained the kid came from an advanced placement program, was on a fast track for a master's degree, and was in their year but 3 years younger. He thought his name was Ethan. The name struck Caleb like a bolt of lightning. He whipped his head around, but the path was empty. Mike asked if he knew him. Caleb shook his head. No, not personally, but he had heard the name in his previous life. He remembered a conversation years later about the tragic end of that brilliant young man. He had taken his own life. He had a dream. He dreamt of what happened after his death in the previous life. His body lay in the morgue for 3 days, unclaimed. The police had called Logan, but the calls were always cut short with irritation. Logan had told the officer to inform Caleb that he was too old for such childish games. If he needed money, he should just come back. The police then found his parents' numbers, but they had severed ties with him after he came out, and both had since remarried. The moment the officer mentioned his name, they hung up. The young policewoman looked at his file photo with a puzzled expression, murmuring to her colleague that he seemed like a nice person and she couldn't understand why no one would claim his body. His spirit floated beside her, looking at the photo. It was his ID picture from when he was 34, his eyes smiling, a young man happy in his love. He answered her unspoken question, even though he knew she couldn't hear. It was because the man who died was blind in his heart. The officers continued their work and finally located one of his university classmates. Mike. Mike stood over the white-sheeted gurney, taking 2 hard drags from a cigarette. When the attendant asked if he wanted to see the face one last time, Mike shook his head. Just have him cremated. He would pay for it. He sighed, turning away. He muttered that Caleb had never been to the ocean, and since he was taking his wife to the coast for a vacation soon, he would take him along. He then went outside and sat on the steps of the funeral home, smoking 3 cigarettes in silence before Logan arrived in a rush. Logan, a man softened by years of wealth and power, demanded to know where Caleb was. His tone was arrogant, accusatory. He asked if Mike had really dragged him all the way out here just to play some stupid prank. Mike slowly extinguished the cigarette under his heel before looking up. He told Logan that he had good insurance, and then his fist connected with Logan's jaw. Logan stumbled back, spitting blood, and asked if Mike was crazy. Mike just pointed at the large sign above the door. He told Logan he wasn't bored enough to trick him into coming to a place like this. A cold laugh escaped him. Logan finally seemed to understand, his face, already starting to swell, contorted with disbelief. He stammered, asking if Caleb was okay. Mike's response was devoid of emotion. He was fine, just reduced to ash. But there was one silver lining. At the end, Caleb didn't have to see Logan's face again and dirty his eyes. The dream ended with the image of Logan frantically rushing into the funeral home. Mike asked him one more time if he was sure he didn't want to go to the game. Caleb, just waking from the disorienting dream, rubbed his eyes and nodded. He was more interested in a public lecture being held on the West Campus. Since his rebirth, he had been deliberately avoiding anything that might lead to an encounter with Logan, starting with the football game. The free time allowed him to explore other interests. When he arrived at the tiered lecture hall, he spotted a familiar dark-haired figure in the corner. It was Ethan. After Mike had mentioned him, Caleb had looked him up on the university forums. A genius, handsome, but eccentric and a loner. A person like that lived in a world of his own making, a world that should have been strong enough to withstand anything. He wondered what could have possibly led him to such a dark end. Caleb took a breath and sat down in the seat next to him. He asked if it was taken. Ethan, who had been engrossed in calculations on a notepad, finally looked up. Beneath a fringe of dark hair were a pair of intense, clear eyes. A high-nosed bridge, a small mole on the side, and strong brows gave him a striking, almost aggressive beauty. For a moment, Caleb was captivated. Ethan just shook his head silently and returned his attention to his work. The numbers on his scratch paper were impeccably neat. Caleb couldn't understand them, but he could feel that this was Ethan's world. What, then, could have pushed him toward death? Ethan's voice, cool and slightly husky, broke the silence. He asked Caleb why he was staring. His words were direct, unfiltered. Caleb smiled, explaining that he just had a good feeling about him and wanted to be friends. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly, his dark eyes studying Caleb's face, making him feel like prey being watched by a predator. The boy's throat moved, his expression a mix of surprise and hesitation. Finally, he lowered his gaze as if making a great sacrifice and agreed. Caleb, amused, said it was fine if he didn't want to. But Ethan insisted. He was his friend now. He introduced himself as Ethan and asked for Caleb's name, his left hand moving to cover Caleb's where it rested on the desk. The touch was dry and warm, and for some reason, it sent a flush of heat to Caleb's face. He was Caleb. This was nothing like the forums described. Just as he was about to say more, a familiar voice drifted from behind him. Someone was asking why a friend hadn't gone to the game. Even without turning, Caleb knew who it was. Logan. What was he doing here? The world seemed to fall silent. He could hear Logan laughing with a classmate as they took seats in the row behind him. Though he hadn't seen him since his rebirth, Logan's youthful image was seared into his memory. Tall, handsome, with a bright, sunny smile. Before life had weathered him, Logan radiated a boyish, earnest love. Caleb remembered how, at that first football game, Logan had been so captivated by the sight of him that he'd been hit by the ball. He'd been dramatically injured. Later, Logan confessed that he had never been interested in men before, that he had been completely straight. But seeing Caleb had been an instant, heart-stopping moment. It was Caleb who had changed him. It was meant to be a sweet confession, but over the years, it had curdled into an accusation. If it weren't for you, I could have loved a woman and had a normal life, not this secret, hidden existence. Why couldn't you have been a woman? What's wrong with me wanting a child? Caleb even began to doubt the intensity of Logan's love back in college. He had held Caleb and whispered that love could conquer all. But sincerity is fleeting, especially when faced with the temptations of the real world. When they were just starting out, life was hard. They huddled together for warmth on a single bed in a damp, dark apartment, and Logan would murmur beautiful dreams for their future into his ear. When those dreams finally came true, the feeling was gone. It was better this way. This time, they wouldn't have to torture each other. Someone behind him complained they had forgotten a pen and asked if their friend had an extra. A warm touch grazed Caleb's back, like a butterfly landing and taking off again. It was Logan poking him. He asked Caleb if he had a spare pen. An involuntary wave of revulsion washed over Caleb. He straightened his posture, trying to create distance. Without turning around, he said in a gruff voice that he didn't. Logan seemed not to have heard him clearly and leaned closer. The familiar scent of lavender laundry detergent enveloped Caleb. It was one of the things Logan had been stubbornly loyal to, along with sleeping on sheets fresh from the sun. Caleb pressed his lips together, forcing himself not to retreat into memories of the past. Before he could speak, Ethan's quiet voice cut in, offering an excuse that was somehow even more awkward. He explained that his boyfriend had said he didn't have a pen to lend. Caleb shook his head in resignation. Boyfriend? Logan's tone was strange. He paused, as if waiting for a denial that never came. Ethan simply confirmed it. After a moment of silence, Logan apologized. Ethan's voice was flat as he accepted the apology, and the conversation ended. Then, Ethan turned back, looked at Caleb's hand, and after a moment's thought, he gently took Caleb's right hand and placed it over his own left. He nodded, satisfied. From behind them, Caleb heard Logan mutter something about men liking men being kind of messed up. A surge of anger shot through him. Before Ethan could react, Caleb spun around, his expression cold. He stared directly at Logan and asked him if he lived by the ocean, because he seemed to think he had jurisdiction over everything. He questioned what right Logan had to judge who people loved, telling him it was none of his business even if someone was in love with an attack helicopter. Why would he call someone else messed up? The handsome, dark-browed young man just stared back, blinking in surprise. His friend nudged him, but Logan didn't react. Ethan's brow lowered, a dangerous light entering his dark eyes. Before Caleb knew what was happening, Ethan shot up from his seat, grabbed Logan by the collar, and started to drag him toward the aisle, telling him to get out. But they were all young men, full of pride and hot blood. Logan's anger flared, and he tried to shove Ethan's hand away. The confrontation between the two handsome students quickly drew the attention of the entire lecture hall. Caleb stood up too, quietly telling Ethan that he was fine and that the professor was about to arrive. Ethan stared at him for a long moment, then pursed his lips and released Logan, sitting back down beside Caleb. Logan still looked like he wanted to say something, but the bell rang and the professor walked in. The classroom quieted down. As the lecture began, Caleb's mind drifted. He regretted his impulsive reaction. If he had just stayed quiet, none of this would have happened. It felt incredibly strange to have someone 3 years his younger, whom he had just met, stand up for him. He glanced at Ethan. The anger was gone from his face. He was completely absorbed in the professor's lecture, his eyes fixed on the numbers on his notepad. He was back in his own world. But perhaps it was just Caleb's imagination that his grip on his pen had tightened, his knuckles white. This fierce, protective boy didn't seem like someone who would take his own life. He tried to remember when he had died in the last life. Someone at a class reunion had mentioned the genius who had passed away too soon, and had said when it happened. It was the same year as his 6th anniversary with Logan. He recalled Logan swirling a glass of wine, a faint, unreadable smile on his lips as he listened to the story. All he had said was that it was a shame. During the break between classes, Ethan stood up and started to leave the lecture hall, motioning for Caleb to follow. Caleb, confused, asked if he wasn't going to stay for the rest of the lecture. He didn't mind either way. He was only there out of curiosity. Ethan shook his head, saying he had already learned the material on his own. Caleb wanted to ask why he had come to the lecture in the first place, but he felt it would be prying. As they walked outside, Ethan apologized, admitting his excuse about the boyfriend had been problematic. Caleb assured him it was fine and he didn't mind. He said that if there was nothing else, he would head back to his dorm. It had been an unlucky day. He had run into Logan after all and caused a scene. He should have just stayed in his room. Ethan pressed his lips together, his gaze intense, and quietly reminded him that they hadn't exchanged contact information yet. Caleb had forgotten. He smiled, pulling out his phone and telling Ethan to scan his code. After they became friends on the messaging app, Caleb noticed Ethan's profile picture was a photo of a Starburst candy wrapper. It was an odd choice, but it stirred a vague sense of familiarity. He felt like he had seen it somewhere in his past life, but he couldn't place it. He shook the thought away and said he was leaving. He waved goodbye to Ethan. Ethan replied with a very serious farewell, and for some reason, his smile seemed tinged with a strange mix of longing and nostalgia, as if he never expected to see Caleb again. Caleb turned and walked away. Ethan watched until he was a tiny speck in the distance before rubbing his tired eyes and heading back. This time, he wouldn't just avoid his past mistakes. He would reclaim his dreams. In his last life, at Logan's request, he had given up a PhD offer from his mentor to help Logan build a business from scratch. He remembered countless nights at business dinners, drinking until his stomach bled. All that mattered was closing the deal. While their company eventually became successful, a part of him always felt a deep sense of regret for the dream he had abandoned, developing high-end microchips. Now, fate had given him another chance, and he was determined to seize it. Even with the memories of his past life, there was so much he needed to do to prepare. He was busy. After completing his daily study goals, he finally opened his phone. The chat window with Ethan was empty. The last message, a cute cat paw sticker Ethan had sent a week ago. Though they were contacts, they didn't have much in common to talk about. He hesitated for a moment, then typed out a message asking if he was there. Ethan's reply was almost instantaneous. "I am." Caleb blinked, then slowly typed his next message, asking if he was free sometime soon. He wanted to treat him to a meal. Ethan's reply was just as concise. "Yes." Caleb found it a little amusing and asked if he didn't want to know when. Ethan's response came immediately. He was free whenever Caleb asked. Caleb smiled to himself. As he was about to type something else, a friend request popped up on his screen. It was Logan. Even without a name in the note, he recognized the profile picture instantly. He hadn't thought about Logan in a long time. It seemed that in this new life without him, everything was getting better. He stared at the icon, his mind a jumble. Why? He had already let Logan go. Why was he forcing himself back into his life? The note on the request simply said there was something he needed to talk to him about and asked him to please accept. Caleb took a deep breath and deleted the request. There was nothing left for them to say. He arranged to meet Ethan. He arrived 15 minutes early, only to find Ethan already waiting under a blossoming dogwood tree. The young man was dressed nicely today, not in his usual gray hoodie, but in a crisp white shirt that accentuated his tall, lean frame. He had also gotten a haircut. The long bangs were gone, revealing his sharp, handsome features. He was standing there, head tilted slightly up at the flowers, lost in thought. A few people were already discreetly taking pictures of him. Caleb could already imagine the university forums tomorrow. He walked over and asked with a smile if he had been waiting long. Ethan insisted he had just arrived. Caleb brushed a stray petal from his shoulder, smiling, and changed the subject. He told him he was taking him to a favorite restaurant of his. As they walked, they made small talk. Caleb mentioned that he heard Ethan was also from their home city, Northgate. Ethan watched him for a moment before nodding. Caleb laughed, remarking on what a small world it was and that they might have even gone to the same school. Ethan's lips curved into a small smile. He had gone to Northwood High. Caleb sighed with mock disappointment, saying he had gone to Ridgeview High, so he couldn't claim to be his senior. He then started to cross the street. Ethan gently pulled him back, quietly reminding him that he was going the wrong way. Caleb paused for a second, then agreed, feigning forgetfulness. It was just a small test, and Ethan had walked right into it. Caleb had only vaguely told him it was a restaurant he liked, but Ethan's reaction made it obvious he knew exactly which one Caleb frequented. He was more observant than he let on. Caleb shot a sidelong glance at him before walking ahead with a lighter step. During the meal, he saw another friend request. It was Logan again. The note read, "It's Logan," followed by, "I'm Logan," and another, "This is Logan." Caleb wondered if he was having a breakdown. Of course he knew who he was. He frowned, annoyed by the harassment, and blocked him. The walk back after dinner was pleasant. Caleb found himself talking a lot, with the usually quiet young man listening beside him. He learned that Ethan was afraid of dogs and loved sweets. He asked about the Starburst wrapper profile picture, wondering if it was his favorite candy. Ethan's eyes softened as he confirmed that he liked it very much. Caleb said he liked it too, recalling that his mother used to buy it for him when he was a child. He shoved his hands in his pockets, smiling as they walked. But after his parents divorced and remarried, they both had new families and little time for him. That brief, happy memory was locked away in the past, a source of bittersweet nostalgia. Ethan's smile revealed nothing as he remarked on the coincidence. As Caleb agreed non-committally, a figure suddenly burst from the bushes, startling him. It was Logan. He looked terrible, as if he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot and he hadn't shaved. He stared at Caleb, and then a strange, vacant smile spread across his face. It sent a chill down Caleb's spine. Before Caleb could even take a step back, Logan grabbed his arm. He knew. Logan's voice was hoarse, with an almost imperceptible tremor. His grip tightened. He asked Caleb if he didn't remember him, his lover. The question confirmed Caleb's wild suspicion. Logan had been reborn, too. Caleb tried to pull away, insisting he had never met him before and would call the police if he didn't let go. Before he could break free, the silent Ethan moved, his fist smashing into Logan's face. Caleb tried to stop him, but Ethan's eyes were wild as he rained punch after punch onto Logan's face. Muttering that he wouldn't let him kill Caleb this time, that Caleb shouldn't be afraid. Caleb fell silent. If everyone was reborn, then what was the point of pretending? But he decided to keep up the act. He shouted at them, asking if they were crazy, and stepped between them. The fist flying toward his face stopped just inches away. Ethan's lips trembled as he whispered Caleb's name. Caleb frowned, pushing Ethan's fist down with both hands. He told them he didn't know what they were talking about, but if they got arrested for brawling in public, he wouldn't be the one to bail them out. And he certainly didn't want to see a headline tomorrow about two men fighting over him. It was humiliating. He turned to Logan, whose face held a look of stunned relief. His eyes were filled with a nauseatingly deep affection. Logan told him there must be some misunderstanding that he could explain. It was okay if Caleb didn't remember him. They could get to know each other again, and he was sure Caleb would fall for him. His certainty was absolute. 1,000 memories flashed through Caleb's mind, settling on the final image of Logan slamming the door. He stated clearly that he didn't know him, and if he continued to harass him, Ethan's punches were very painful, and he wouldn't stop him next time. Besides, he added, turning the knife, he thought Logan found men who liked other men disgusting. He watched the color drain from Logan's face and smiled coldly. Weren't you the one who wanted to be normal? Why are you back here, trying to dirty my life again? You're repulsive. I truly despise you. Logan begged him not to say that. He reached out and grabbed the corner of Caleb's shirt, pleading. Caleb shook him off, saying he didn't like it when Logan said his name. They weren't close. He took Ethan's hand and started to walk past him. Logan's desperate voice called out from behind, asking if Caleb really thought Ethan was any better. At his words, Ethan's face went pale. He tried to cover Caleb's ears, but the same hands that had been so strong moments ago were easily pushed away. Logan claimed he was also from the future, a future where they had been together until old age, successful and happy. He called Ethan a creep who stalked Caleb from the shadows, a lunatic, a psycho, a bad omen who would only bring him misfortune. He stood up, his expression earnest, and held out a hand. He promised to protect Caleb. Ethan's hands trembled, but he stood silently, watching Caleb go, not trying to stop him. Caleb walked until he was standing right in front of Logan. He raised his hand and slapped him across the face. He was done pretending. He asked Logan if ruining his last life wasn't enough, if he had to destroy this one too. He was the one who had caused his death, so what was this act of deep love? He was free now, so why come back? Wasn't he disgusted by men? Didn't he want a normal family? Why was he being so pathetic now? As he said the words, his own heart ached with a phantom pain. Logan was, at his core, a terrible person. On the day he died, Caleb had been composing a text message. He wasn't sure if Logan's new partner knew about their history, but he felt she had a right to know the truth. He stared into Logan's panicked eyes. "You blame him? You were the one who killed me. You destroy everyone around you and you still don't see it. You're not just disgusting, Logan. You're a hypocrite." After that, he took Ethan's hand again and walked away. Logan fell to his knees on the pavement and didn't follow. They walked in silence for a long time before Caleb finally spoke. He said that while he didn't know why Ethan liked him, he thought it was probably a bad idea. He wasn't as great as Ethan seemed to think. Ethan turned his head to look at the sunset, at the sky, at anything but Caleb. After a long moment, he answered quietly that he had already liked him for more than 10 years. So it was impossible to stop. Caleb told him he couldn't accept him right now, asking if he was prepared to keep waiting. Ethan's reply was simple. Waiting was what he did best. He finally looked at Caleb, his clear eyes filled with sincerity. He confessed that he had always thought it would be enough to just love him from the shadows. Caleb said that wasn't very kind of him, making Ethan love him unrequited for so long. Ethan shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips as he finally met Caleb's gaze. Caleb, he said, was the best, kindest person he had ever known. He wanted to give him all the best things in the world, even if he didn't like him back. Caleb's voice was a soft sigh, mixed with a hint of sorrow. "You idiot." His heart felt heavy with a mix of sourness and regret. Ethan had hidden it so well in their last life. Caleb had never known. But his love had been there all along. The starbursts that appeared in his high school desk. The umbrella that was suddenly there on a rainy day. The hooded figure that walked a safe distance behind him on late nights. The favorite restaurant that always had a table free for him. The anonymous account that always answered his questions online. He had been walking with him for a very long time. He dreamt again, the second time since his rebirth. This time, he saw the world through Ethan's eyes, living through his lonely life. His mother had a terrifying, pathological need for control, terrified he would leave her like his father had. She had kept him tied up at home like a dog when he was a child. His days filled with her screams and insults, punctuated by brief, confusing moments of affection. One day, she was forced to take him to a community event. He cowered in a corner, watching the people with dark, sullen eyes. He saw a younger version of himself appear before him, smiling. "What a cute kid," he had said. "Why are you all alone?" Young Caleb pulled a handful of starbursts from his pocket and offered him one. At that age, Ethan couldn't even speak properly, only make small, guttural sounds. He clutched the hem of his shirt, too scared to take the candy. Just then, young Caleb's father called for him. He answered, then shoved the entire handful of candy into little Ethan's hands, said goodbye, and ran off. Little Ethan didn't eat the candies. He kept them under his pillow until they melted. He would clutch the sticky, sweet-smelling pillow, wishing he could make time last longer. He knew he had mental health issues. How could anyone endure that kind of life and not be damaged? But just the scent of those candies was enough to calm him. After his mother disappeared, a combination of state and community aid allowed him to go to school. He followed Caleb's path, his excellent grades getting him into the same middle school. But for high school, as a student on scholarship, he had to attend a designated school across town. So every Sunday he would finish all his homework in advance, get permission to leave the last 2 study periods, and walk from Northwood High to Ridgeview High. He would wait behind a tree just to watch Caleb leave school. He was a silent admirer, a knight in the shadows. But after Logan realized he existed, Ethan's chances to see Caleb became fewer and fewer, especially after graduation. There were times he sat in his car watching Logan, his foot hovering over the accelerator, only to force himself to stop. Later, his illness relapsed. He hadn't seen Caleb in almost 6 months. With trembling fingers, he sent a text message. It was a brief resume. Ethan, 26. No bad habits. I want to be your anything. Just to be able to see you. Please consider me. I'm begging you. The young man was curled up on his sofa, surrounded by candy wrappers, staring at his phone screen in the dark, his fingertips twitching. A reply came quickly. It was from Caleb. Ethan, there is one thing you can do for me. Ethan's heart leaped. What? The reply was swift and brutal. Go die. My world will be cleaner once you're gone. Logan told me everything. You're disgusting. The message wasn't from Caleb. He never knew it existed. Could only have been Logan. Caleb's dream self wanted to scream, to tell Ethan the truth, but it was only a dream. He couldn't hear. On a stormy night, Ethan walked to the roof of the office building. The wind whipped his clothes, revealing a body that was little more than skin and bones. He spread his arms wide, his face streaked with what could have been rain or tears, and he jumped. Caleb tried to stop him, but his form passed right through him. After his death, his spirit stayed by Caleb's side. He watched Caleb weep on the floor, and he knelt beside him, his hands cupped as if to catch the tears he couldn't touch. He murmured constantly, even knowing he couldn't be heard. Caleb, don't cry. He isn't worth it. I wish I could send you my money. It's all for you. Seeing you like this hurts me too. When Caleb was hit by the car, Ethan's spirit knelt by his body, blaming himself. It's all my fault. If I hadn't gotten sick, I could have protected you. If I could do it all over again, I would trade all my luck, my entire future, for Caleb to have one more chance. In the final moments of the dream, Caleb heard a distant, sorrowful sigh echo through the void. Life moved on. The pain of the past was a distant cloud. He got his PhD as he'd always wanted and began working at his dream research institute. This time, Ethan was not a shadow, but a constant presence at his side through every major milestone. Logan became the one lurking in the corners. On a rainy day, Caleb saw an umbrella left for him by the door. He knew it was from the gaunt figure hiding in the shadows nearby. With a blank expression, he kicked the umbrella aside and prepared to run into the downpour. Just then, a black car pulled up. Ethan got out, opened a large black umbrella, and walked quickly to his side. He glanced at the umbrella by Caleb's feet and gave a small, soft laugh. "Let's go," he said. Caleb nodded and stepped under his umbrella. As they walked, Ethan tilted it instinctively toward him, letting the rain soak his own left shoulder. "I agree," Caleb said suddenly, as they neared the car. Ethan, in the middle of a question, stopped and stared at him, his eyes widening. Caleb smiled. "I agree. You've succeeded in chasing me." Though his last relationship had been a painful failure, he wouldn't let it rob him of the courage to love again. He would enter every relationship with honesty and sincerity, and be responsible to his partner. In the midst of that storm, he finally felt that he had completely let go of the past. The room of his heart was swept clean, ready to welcome someone new. They embraced in the rain. Ethan hummed a happy tune under his breath. His voice was low and husky when he spoke. "You flew into my arms. I'm not letting you go now." Caleb looked up toward the corner where Logan had been hiding. He saw a pair of bloodshot, sorrowful eyes. He smiled and said, "Good. I wouldn't have it any other way." Even after they were officially together, Ethan was still deeply insecure. He liked to hold Caleb tightly in his sleep. His sleep was light. If Caleb shifted even slightly to escape the heat, Ethan would instinctively pull him back, patting his back soothingly like one would a child. But this time it was clear he was having a nightmare. Caleb gently shook him awake. Though Ethan rarely slept well, his trembling and quiet crying were too much to bear. When he woke up, there were still tears on his face. He didn't say anything, just stared at Caleb. After a long moment, the young man reached out a trembling hand and lightly touched Caleb's cheek with his fingertips. "It's warm," Ethan said, dazed. "It's real." A happy Caleb. A wave of warmth spread through Caleb's chest. He touched his nose to Ethan's and repeated softly, "Yes, it's real." A happy Caleb who loves Ethan. Ethan quickly shook his head, insisting that it wasn't necessary for Caleb to love him. As long as Caleb was happy, that was all that mattered. "Silly," Caleb sighed, pulling him into an embrace. Only a Caleb who loves Ethan can be a happy Caleb. Caleb and Ethan are the best match in the world. He felt Ethan's tears soak his pajama shirt. "It's not a dream? Caleb loves me too?" he whispered. Caleb answered him with firm conviction. "Yes, Caleb loves Ethan too." They held each other in the quiet for a long, long time, so long that Caleb thought he had fallen asleep again. Then Ethan murmured, "Tomorrow will Caleb buy me candy? Starbursts?" Like a magician, Caleb pulled a candy from under his pillow. "I can make one appear for you right now." A faint smile graced the young man's lips. His throat bobbed, and he leaned in, pressing his lips to Caleb's. He kissed him until Caleb's vision blurred. He heard Ethan whisper against his ear, his voice thick and sweet, "Help me unwrap it." With trembling fingers, Caleb peeled back the paper wrapper. He watched as Ethan took the candy from his fingertips with his lips, and then he smiled. Outside, a storm had begun to rage. Caleb suddenly remembered that today was the anniversary of Ethan's death in the last life. He held him even tighter. Ethan chuckled softly at his sudden embrace. They were lucky. They hadn't missed each other this time.